Hello, everyone. I am Reverend Dr. Tammy Denise, and I am excited to join you again tonight for our panel, Making Space, Caregivers and Breast Cancer. This is National Caregivers Month, and that will guide our discussion today. I am a 19-year breast cancer survivor. I am the co-founder of Carrie's Touch, and I'm the co-principal investigator for Project SOAR, Speaking Our African American Realities, a research project in partnership with UCLA. And I am delighted to be here tonight as your moderator. This is my third time here, and I'm so excited. Each time I get an opportunity to meet new panelists, I'm like, oh my God, they have outdone themselves because the previous panel was so good. And tonight in our pre-discussion, getting just a few minutes to meet with these incredible caregivers and survivors, it has been an absolute joy and delight. So we are in for a phenomenal conversation. Without any further ado, we want to thank our sponsors. This event is sponsored in partnership with Count Me In, a cancer research initiative focused on pushing forward patient-partnered research. You can learn more about their work by visiting their website at www.joincountmein.org. Thanks also to For the Breast of Us, and thanks to CGen for sponsoring this event. Let's get into these incredible panelists. Joining us tonight, we have Megan Claire Chase, better known as Megzy, and that's how we'll be referring to her tonight. Megzy is a breast cancer survivor and patient advocate from Atlanta, Georgia. She's also a breast cancer program director at Share Cancer Support. Her blog, Life on the Cancer Train, details her experiences as a young adult cancer survivor while advocating for better treatment and resources. Megzy's got a long list of wonderful accolades. You can find her bio, I'm sure, on one of the phenomenal websites that she is connected to. And welcome, Megzy. We look forward to having you in this discussion. Next, we have a mother and daughter duo, Monisha Parker and her mother, Sylvia Morrison. Monisha is a North Carolina native who watched both her mother and grandmother battle breast cancer before receiving her own diagnosis at the young age of 28. She was diagnosed with stage 2B invasive ductal carcinoma in November of 2014. She is passionate about encouraging women to redefine their strength and womanhood beyond their diagnosis. We are looking forward to the conversation with Monisha, I almost called you Sylvia, with Monisha and her mother, Sylvia, and we'll learn more about Sylvia and her journey as part of the discussion. And rounding out this incredible panel is Chef Lee. Your version of healthy is Lee Marshall's motto. Everyone has their own unique version of healthy. It's just how you choose your nutrition and movement that makes it your own. A proud mother of two, she is a resident of Atlanta, Georgia, but is a native of Long Island, New York. Lee is a 7-plus-year nutrition and movement expert and graduate of Belhaven University with a degree in nutritional science and business management. Lee has also a long list of wonderful accolades, but she loves to find time to cater to her clients across the nation and events such as the Nick Cannon Foundation, Angle Rich of the Credit Rich app at XSW. I'm sure you'll fix that for me, Coach Lee, and more. So welcome, panelists, to each of you. I'd like to open tonight's discussion by giving each of you about 90 seconds to tell us whether you're a breast cancer survivor, we know some of you are, whether you're a caregiver, or whether you've been both. So you can just say your name again, tell us, if you have a cancer diagnosis or when you became a caregiver, but let the folks kind of know who we're talking to before we dive into some of the questions. Let's start with the mother-daughter duo. And Sylvia, since I didn't have a lot of information on you, I will give you a little more time. Just tell us a little bit about who you are and your journey thus far.
Yes, I am Sylvia Morrison. I'm actually a two-time cancer survivor. My mom was also diagnosed. And then my daughter, as you know, was diagnosed at 28. I decided to go with a double mastectomy. The second time around, the first time around, I was treated with 6 rounds of chemo as well as radiation. So I've been both on the caregiver side and the patient side. And it's been just a very empowering journey for me. I learned a lot. And I also learned it's okay to say you're not strong during this journey.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much for joining us. And you have an incredible story that I can't wait for us to dive into. Let's go over to you, Monisha.
Yeah, so I am both a breast cancer survivor and a caregiver. I've kind of been on, my mom and I have switched roles a few times. So I think my experience with her second diagnosis was different because I had gone through my own. So I've had the experience from both ends.
Wow, thank you and welcome to the conversation. Let's hop over to you, Megzi.
Yes, so I am a 7-year stage 2A invasive lobular breast cancer survivor. But my mother, she's an ovarian survivor. She had ovarian cancer when she was pregnant with me, and now she has a rare blood cancer. So I have been both a caregiver pre-cancer and then a caregiver post-cancer for me.
Wow. It's going to be a rich conversation. And Chef Lee, tell us about you.
I am a granddaughter of a double mastectomy, no longer with us breast cancer patients. And I have as well had 2 breast cancer scares, but by the grace of God, I have not been diagnosed with it as well.
Okay, wonderful. Just writing that down. So Chef Lee, let's open up this conversation with you. Before we hopped on here, y'all, we were having conversations about nutrition and food and how we can all take care of ourselves, because I too have been a caregiver. My late sister and co-founder of Carrie's Touch, she was the caregiver for me when I was diagnosed. And then many years after my survivorship and so on and so forth, she was diagnosed with bladder cancer, and I became a caregiver for her. And she has passed her torch and she's now watching over me. So I do know the wear and tear that being a caregiver has on our bodies. And I believe that, there are studies out there that talk about how oftentimes caregivers actually can end up either sicker than the patient they've been caring for, or they pass before that patient passes. So can you talk to us about how nutrition can play a part in our overall survivorship, and how important it is for us to make sure that we are having the proper nutrition to survive both cancer and to be a caregiver?
Definitely. That's actually a great place for us to start. And you are correct. A lot of times we as caregivers winds up becoming sicker than those that we are caring for because we forget to take care of ourselves and overall about self-care. Nutrition plays a critical role in our overall well-being, and it's something that we all need to really pay attention to. If you really think about it, the support in recovery, the cancer treatments that our care that our people go through, it's a lot of stress to be able to understand not only what they're going through, at the same time, understand how we can give our own amount of support at the same time. So a lot of times I like to express to people, you know, it's important to make sure that you are taking care of yourself from the inside out through gut health. Making sure that you are taking care of yourself from the inside out from an immunal support. And those are things that you will do with by eating limes, bergamot, grapefruit, ginger root. Those things are things that you want to keep into your system consistently every single day in order for you to make sure you have the right amount of energy, making sure that you are not building up on mucus, making sure that your gut is staying active in order to make sure that you have enough energy to support the person who you're giving care to. Just to even start there is tremendous. And I think a lot of people just truly need to understand how much it is important for you to worry about your own nutrition benefits before anything else.
Wow, so much you said there. So a quick question, when you talked about, you know, starting with your own gut health. So you got a person who becomes a caregiver and they have a history of not eating well and gut health is poor. What is step one for that person? Because we could get on this call and we could hear that there's advice all over the internet about what we should do. I get these, what was the guy from American Idol, Randy Jackson, about gut health. When, you know, when I'm on YouTube, all of a sudden here's Randy Jackson about his gut health. But what is step one for people to help turn their gut health around?
Noticing, honestly, how your body is working. Understanding that your body is supposed to dispel the things that you're eating within a certain amount of time. And if you're not doing that, then you already should know that there is first an issue. The amount of water that you're intaking, adding ginger tea, ginger cold or hot, adding citrus to your diet in any form of it, whether it's through a drink, whether it's through a salad, whether it's through vitamins, is important. So noticing and understanding what it is that your body is doing regularly for you, and understanding, oh, this is not normal, even though it may be normal to you. And then if you're not really understanding what it is that your body should or should not be doing, having conversations with your doctor or whoever is your PC to understand how my body should be reacting, how much sleep should I be getting, how often should I be eating, which should be really every 3 to 4 hours, just to make sure you're constantly keeping enough energy in your system. So if you don't understand how your body is supposed to regularly operate, having a conversation with the PC to understand, and or doing constant research if you have the time, or having a conversation with someone that is more knowledgeable than you are in regards to the way your body should operate and or how you should be eating regularly, will start that conversation and start how you should change anything that needs to be changed.
Wow, such rich information. I think there was a saying, well, I'll say this, in the Black community, there's a saying, if you know better, then you do better, right? And so now you don't really have an excuse to say you did not know, because the lack of knowledge, lack of awareness is killing us on a regular basis. And even if you don't do anything, but what Chef Lee said was to pay attention. What I know as strong Black women, what we often do, or women period, what we often do is we are so busy taking care of everybody else, we don't have time to look at us and see if there's anything going on with us. So paying attention to self first, and then you can start making some necessary changes. This typically comes later on in the conversation, but Chef Lee, if people have questions, can they follow up with you later on?
Of course, please do. I highly recommend it and would be honored to help anyone, again, in any way that I can. And the easiest way to find me is on Instagram at Lee, LEIGH _ plain and simple is the best way to find me.
Okay, and I'm sure that the sponsors of this town hall will definitely make sure that that information is available somewhere connected to this video when it is made public. Thank you so much, Chef Lee. Let's move over to you, Sylvia, because you actually are the middle of a sandwich around caregiving. You were a caregiver, then you became a patient, then you became a caregiver again. Is that correct? Do I have it lined up correctly?
Mhm.
All right. So let's talk first from, becoming a caregiver. Can you tell us a little bit about what that might have been like? And what advice do you have for other caregivers?
With my mom, I can say that one of her things was, her prayer was that when she got to the point where she couldn't do anything for herself, she wanted God to just take her home. She didn't want to be here like that. So I can say that she only was here for less than 24 hours when she got to that point, and she went home to be with the Lord. So I did not see her get to the point where she was just down and out and sick. And I'm thankful for that. After my diagnosis, of course, my 28-year-old daughter was diagnosed. And that's what I felt like I ran into a brick wall, because I felt like then I'm not able to be a caretaker. When I was going through my diagnosis, people would tell me all the time, you're so strong. But in the inside, I was not so strong. But in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I don't want to be a burden to anybody. Didn't know that my daughter was going to get this diagnosis. So I'm so glad that I was strong and she saw me go through this, because that helped her, I think. And I'll just let her speak on that. But watching her go through it and being her caretaker, it was hard to see my child endure, and I had already gone through it. But I think as caretakers, we get so caught up in that one word, care, and we forget to turn in the mirror and look at our own selves. We're so busy looking at how we can do for this person and how we can take care of them that we kind of put aside what we need. And that's what I did, because she had 2 kids to take care as well. So it was all about her during that time. And with my daughter, I watched her. When I was diagnosed the first time, she fell apart, like, because she saw what was going on with my mom. But the second time I was diagnosed, I watched this same person. I watched this warrior just come up in her, and her take, I didn't see the tears. I saw her step up to the plate and was like, okay, we get ready to kick cancer butt together. Yeah. And so that's what she did. And we flip-flopped those roles. And I'm just really, really proud of her as a mom to see how she learned through the process. Sometimes people go through a process and they don't learn anything. But I tell you, she learned it and she implemented it.
Wow. Listen, if y'all don't know how to gas up your baby, you just got a lesson in how to gas up your baby. Yes, Miss Sylvia, thank you for your story. I a question, because I want to give folks context. Give me a timeline. Your mom was diagnosed, then you were diagnosed, then your baby was diagnosed, then you had a second diagnosis. Can you give me a timeline, the difference in between?
Now, my mom was diagnosed for the first time when Monisha was my daughter that you see here now, she was actually only 3 months old.
Okay.
When my mom was first diagnosed.
Okay.
She was diagnosed the second time in 2000, early 2000. And it was metastatic, it spread. And then I was diagnosed the first time at the end of 2010.
Okay, so about 10 years. Okay.
Yes. And then my daughter was diagnosed in 2014. Okay. And I was diagnosed the second time in 2019.
So you probably just have not, I don't want to speak for you, but over the course of about 20 years, you have been on this breast cancer roller coaster between your own diagnosis and watching your daughter and watching your mom and just trying to figure out which way is up. So, as a caregiver in all of that, because like you just said, your mom was less strenuous process, but watching your baby girl navigate this space took you to a whole other level. What type of support did you have as a caregiver to support your daughter?
And that is one thing that I look back on, and I would tell anybody, take advantage of resources. I did not do that. I had my husband, I had my son, my immediate family, but I did not reach out into the community and try to connect with other caregivers or connect with resources. I kind of tried to do it and navigate it with just my small group. When there's a whole there's a whole community of people out there that you can plug into to get resources. And that's something that I did not do. Yeah. Even to this day, I did not do that. And if I had to look back and say, if there's one thing I wish I would have done different, it's that. Because mentally it wears on you. And I did not, I kind of swept it under the rug, suppressed those feelings and kept it moving, saying, I got to do this and I have to do this and I got to make sure I do this. And I was focused on everything around me except what I was feeling on the inside of me.
Wow. You speak directly to the partnership that Carrie's Touch has with UCLA. We look at the Strong Black Woman and the Strong Black Woman schema and the role it plays on the decision-making process of a woman diagnosed with breast cancer. And so often what we have found in our research is that Black women specifically, and if you are other than Black out there, this is not to exclude anybody. This is just to talk about the research of a community that is under-researched, that we don't know a lot about, and we don't know why. Everybody wants to know why Black women die at approximately 41% higher rates, but there is no one cookie cutter answer. So what we are doing in this is starting to look at the woman herself and finding out what her experience has been and how we can help women say yes to support. Sylvia, you talked about not accepting resources, not knowing that they were there because we are so busy fixing it. We have been conditioned and taught that we've got to take care of everybody else. This goes back 400 plus years. I don't want to turn this conversation into something else, but this goes back 400 something years. And looking at the conditioning, the mental conditioning that tells Black women that you're not worthy of having the necessary support and resources that might be available to you, because our women often say, well, somebody else might need it or somebody else could use it. And so I ask the question, do you need it? Doesn't matter what something, because right now we're talking about you. We're not talking about what somebody else needs. And we don't know how to say yes. We don't know how to accept and to receive that type of support. So thank you for your story and thank you for sharing that. And now let's bring this dynamic young woman onto this conversation. Miss Monisha, I want to ask you, were you able to see how important a caregiver is needed to help them get through treatment?
Absolutely. Like when my mom shared with my grandmother, like I had never seen her sick. She was diagnosed when I was so young. So I saw her handle it and, until the very end, she handled it with grace. And after seeing my grandmother pass and my mom being diagnosed, I was terrified. So even seeing her go through her diagnosis and how strong she was, it was helpful to see, but it also made me feel like, all right, when I was diagnosed, so I gotta deal with it. I gotta handle it. I gotta be strong. Like my mom was strong, but I'm glad that for me, I was able to redefine strength for myself and recognize that I needed that help. Like I couldn't imagine going through my diagnosis without the help of my mother. And support system. So I think for me, I realized that you asking for help and accepting help does not make you any less strong. Like, it's necessary. Like, nobody should have to go through a breast cancer diagnosis alone. And, caregivers look different. For me, it was, my mom. For somebody else, it could be a church member or a support group. So I absolutely saw the value in having a caregiver. Like, I could not see myself going through my breast cancer journey without the help of my mom and others.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So again, so here we go. So y'all rock with me for a second. So would you classify yourself as a millennial
Yes.
or Gen Z? Right.
Mhm.
What I love about millennials is millennials look at the world so differently. Y'all look at the world and say, I am not my mother's, child, in the sense of I'm taking that stuff that y'all took back then. Because you said something was so powerful. You said, I had to redefine strength. Nobody taught you that. That's something that you said, I'm going to rise up and create for myself. How do you, in that instance, at such a young age, redefine strength? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think for me, strength is about vulnerability. And I have a daughter too. So I think that I have a daughter now. So I think over time, I've been able to redefine what strength looks like. I know for, my mother, my grandmother, they were independent. And I come from a family of a lot of strong women. They get it done. They do it on their own. And, they don't cry often. You don't see them cry. And I think for me, I had to like tap into being vulnerable and realize that I have to ask for help because it's stressful to feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulder or you don't have, permission to cry. Like, you cry, do what you need to do, feel it all and keep it moving. So I think that has been a big part of like, that's kind of a gift I think that cancer gave me, that I was able to like, that's how I navigate life. And that's kind of what I instill in my daughter. I have a 5-year-old daughter. So I want her to know that it's okay. Like, don't put that pressure on yourself. You don't have to be strong for anybody, that you get to define and redefine as much as you need to. So
Yes. I see why your mama gassed you up the way she did when we started this conversation. Yes, ma'am. Vulnerability. There's a word, right? A word that we just don't know how to say. Here I am in my greatness, but here I am in my flaws, or what the world will look like as flaws. And here I am saying, yes, I need help. And giving yourself, that was so beautiful. You said the gift of cancer actually gave you permission to not be strong.
yeah.
That's a rephrasing of that. That is so beautiful. So for those of you out there joining us today, will you put in the chat and let us know if you're a survivor, if you're a caregiver, or if you've been both? Because it'd be interesting to know, who's chiming in and who's listening. And then tell us, does this resonate with you? Do you see yourself in any of these conversations? So we opened this conversation with Chef Lee talking about the value and the importance of nutrition. How did nutrition play a role, Monisha, in your journey and the way you navigated spACE through survivorship and as a caregiver?
Yeah, I think for me, I did not have many conversations about like with my care team about nutrition. That was like the furthest thing from my mind, even though it should have been top of mind. I think now that I am on the other side, that I've tapped into more resources, and for the first time ever in life, I've talked to a nutritionist. Like, I just didn't think about it while I was like in active treatment. And so I think I'm taking better care of myself on this side of it and really being intentional about, my diet and remaining active. So that's one of the things that I wish that would have been presented to me, but it just wasn't even a thought. It was like, I just got to get through this treatment. And so I'm grateful now that I'm gaining the knowledge and I'm doing what I need to do on that end. But active treatment was not, unfortunately, one of the things that my care team talked to me about. But in survivorship, it has been. played a big role.
Wow. Yeah, we're going to come back to that part. Let's put a pin in there. And Chef Lee, yeah, we're coming back to you on that one. But let's bring in Miss Megzy. Megzy, do you think it would have been difficult to make it through treatment without a caregiver?
I mean, absolutely. You know, something I have learned is when you get a cancer diagnosis, it's bigger than you. Like asking for help is a necessity. Letting go of that pride is a necessity. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help. And it's only now that, like, pre-cancer, I was in my 20s. My mother got diagnosed with her blood cancer when I was in college, and she kept a lot from me. And so I didn't always know, even though I had little spies, telling me. And then I made the decision to actually move back to Georgia. I was living in LA actually at the time, and she didn't know I had spies because as a only child of divorced parents, I'm like, I only have one mother, but I knew she wouldn't ask me to move back. And when I saw her, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, you're looking translucent. I was like, I need to be here for her, not knowing what a major chess move that would be years later when I would have my own diagnosis. And what I realized pre-cancer, the way I used to deal, with her fatigue or not being able to eat, I would get frustrated, I would get impatient. And I did try and get some help in like processing what was happening. But then once I got my own diagnosis, and the fact that now it's like I know so much for my own, and even changing my career to even work in this space, that now, my mother lets me see her labs. Now she had to get a port. She was like, what was it like to get a port? And I'm like, oh, let me show you my port scar. And I'm like, this is a weird mother-daughter bonding moment. And I remember the first time I actually met my oncologist, it was at the same cancer center where my mother goes. And the woman recognized my mother because she goes every week. And she was like, Dr. Chase, you don't have chemo until next week. I was like, oh no, it's her child. I'm meeting my oncologist for the first time. And the look on that woman's face was like, and I was like, yeah, it's a weird mother-daughter bonding moment. But it's been hard because now I suffer post-cancer. I have a lot of collateral damage to the body and my fatigue. Now I fully understand, after going through my mother's fatigue. But then when I'm fatigued and I don't have a lot of local support, I kind of do, I was listening to Chef Lee, and I'm like, yeah, because if she's not eating, I'm not thinking to eat because she's like not having an appetite. I'm pushing myself because I'm working full time, but then I'm taking meetings while I'm taking her to get a blood transfusion. And I realize I am really not taking care of myself. And I think it's harder to see if you don't have like a spouse or other kids to be like, hey, you're looking a little run down, so it takes me a little bit longer to realize when I need to caregive for myself too, which is odd when I think about it. But I feel anyone going through cancer, and it's really hard when it's, mother-daughter in the family, because it's like I have right now anticipatory grief for my mother. Like, she's still here. We caregive, like I'm going to Costco tomorrow, like for her. And I think to myself, but wow, even that trip for me, I deal with chronic pain. So I know that's probably going to take me 2 days to recover because I have to load my stuff and her stuff and then unload her stuff. Like, it's a lot of thinking and planning to make sure I'm there for her, but then she wants to be there for me, but she doesn't have the strength. And so it's a weird dynamic now that I'm older. It's hard. Caregiving is hard. And I didn't realize that anticipatory grief that I was feeling. I'm like, she's still here. I need to be in the present moment. Stop thinking later. But that's something that's been recent that I recognized I was doing.
Goodness. So much. First and foremost, caregiving is so crucial because none of us can survive cancer without a caregiver, right? And so we know the value and the importance of caregiving. And when you talked about having spies, I was like, oh, wow, how lovely is that? It's like, okay, I got eyes on you, mom. I might not be here, but I got eyes on you, right? And how beautiful was it for you to make the sacrifice to say that my mother is worthy of me now coming back to care for her, not knowing that here, there was a diagnosis waiting for you down the road. And your mom not being able to actually care for you in the same way. So I'm going to, hop back over there to what Miss Sylvia said early on when she talked about accessing resources that were available to help her navigate that space, but she just didn't. And sometimes I know how hard it is to actually access resources. You got to go through all this red tape. You got to fill out the paperwork. You're tired, you're overwhelmed, you're emotional, all the things. And what we say here at Carrie's Touch is sometimes we have to take that superwoman cape off and turn it into a blanket and move from caregiving to self-care. And it sounds like you are still figuring out how to navigate that terrain of where your mom is and she's not able to care for you. And so I am going to, at the risk, y'all, of not giving coaching, I'm not giving therapy, I ain't giving none of that. I am just regurgitating what's already been said by folks on this here call that have worked for them. I mean, we can learn from our champion, Monisha, and redefine strength. We get permission to redefine what caregiving can look like for us. I know that for the rest of us, and count me in, we'll have resources, caregiving resources made available, or at least links to various resources for caregiving. I know that I will provide some information to them as well. And I think it's called My Daughter's Circle, a phenomenal caregiving podcast and caregiving resource for caregivers that navigate the terrain from A to Z with regard to caregiving. So my heart extends to you because living in chronic pain and trying to care for someone is a very daunting and difficult task. And I celebrate you that you're still able to find joy. Just your name alone, Megzy, exudes joy. So thank you for showing up and having this discussion with us tonight.
Thank you.
And I don't want to miss the anticipatory grief. Many of us deal with either survivor's guilt or anticipatory grief on some level, because our truth is, after a diagnosis, whether you're a caregiver or the patient, we are different on the other side of that. And we have to redefine who we are and how we show up in that space. So Chef Lee, I'm going to come back to you and ask you, what is one way to get a nutritionist on the medical team? And do you think that the caregiver should change their diet while caring for their loved one during treatment?
So I think it depends on where you sit within your cancer diagnosis as to how you go about finding the proper nutritionist and or dietitian for you and your current needs. I say that because when we get to the later stages of cancer, unfortunately, especially as we are getting ready to go to the other side, you're kind of forced to have a complete care team that's put in place for you. And that's more from a state regulation standpoint. Whereas, as you've heard of these three young ladies, it wasn't really a focus. It's not necessarily really mandatory. So having to want to feel better for yourself and or for the person that you're caring for has to be something that you place in the forefront of your mind. But when trying to find someone, sometimes that can be complicated. You're hoping and trusting that the people that you're reaching out to are certified or they're know how to deal with someone who has a cancer diagnosis, which every nutritionist and every dietitian does not know how to, which is really, really important to understand. I do believe it is extremely important that both the caregiver as well as the cancer patient definitely pay attention to not only the way that we're eating, but also the way that we're moving, especially when it comes to the caregiver. When you speak about fatigue, yes, you can alleviate fatigue from the foods that you're eating, but it also comes from putting yourself in a state of mindfulness through yoga or meditation or reaching out spiritually to whomever your higher power is that you believe in. I know mine is God, but for those who don't, it takes a state of putting you in calm and mindfulness in order to overcome something like fatigue. But I definitely recommend making sure that you're doing your due diligence to do your research. One of the sites that I generally will recommend is eatright.org. That you're able to find registered dietitians and nutritionists through that site to look for the right person that's going to suit you and or your family or other person's needs. And they have telehealth help or in-person help, which is always a great source.
Wow. Thank you for that information. And I think kind of where you ended is a very important part to notice. You said find the nutritionist that suits you. A lot of times we're assigned to a person and we think we're stuck with that person, and we're not. You can fire your doctor, you can fire your nutritionist. Now go get another one. Don't just fire and quit. But you don't have to be stuck with someone that's not serving you adequately. In this conversation, this is a very rich conversation because everybody on this call has had, it has either been that caregiver or has had some, well, Megzy, I think that's not true for you because you just said that you don't have the type of support that maybe you need as a patient on the other side of this. And for those of you that are on this call, and anybody can answer this question. What would you say to folks like Megzy and other people who might not have the type of support that they want, let alone that they need? And, how can we find some, I'll just leave it there. How can we help them find some support? That's what I want to say. How do we encourage the Megzys of the world that are out there?
Honestly, for me, I feel like we can encourage someone until we're blue to do something. But it's really hard for someone with any diagnosis to take that if they don't feel like you truly understand where they are and where they're coming from. Granted, I have not been in the position to have breast cancer, but I have had other major ailments that I have gone through. And you can scream to me until I'm blue, you're blue in the face, that I need you to go get help. I need you to focus on this. But because you are not going through what I'm going through, that doesn't necessarily resonate to me. So I think trying to understand how to help them in other areas so you find a common ground sometimes helps you navigate how to help them in the areas they truly need help with. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just been my personal experience.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And Megzy, I'm going to come to you in a second and ask you what type of support would you need, to help you navigate the space. But I wanted to go to Sylvia and or Monisha to see if you have anything to offer to those out there who might be listening, who don't have support or who need support and want support.
I mean, I'll say, I think leaning into community is really important. Finding support groups. There are a lot of groups now, I know, with social media and online, like I found for the rest of us after my diagnosis. And it's been good for me to be connected with the group because I'm always, if I see someone online who's been diagnosed, I reach out. And I think it's important to really lean into community with people who understand what you're going through is really important. It's been helpful. for me. So I think that's a great place to start, that there are a lot of people who are available, who are willing to share their stories and resources and things that have helped them.
Wonderful, thank you. Sylvia, you want to chime in?
Yes, I'll kind of piggyback off what Monisha said. Because I know when I was diagnosed, I wasn't that person that was going to reach out to community resources, but sometimes it's just about sitting down, having a conversation and expressing your needs to someone, because you'll be surprised. Someone may say, well, let me come clean your house, or let me go pick up your grocery. Because I know the last time I was diagnosed, I had coworkers who said, well, Sylvia, I'll come clean your house, or I'll come do this. So you'll be surprised how many people that will honestly help you. But we have to first just say we need help. We have to admit that we can't do it all by ourselves and feel okay saying that and getting the help, because people will step up to the plate. We just have to communicate it.
Wonderful, thank you. So Megzi, what would feel supportive for you, not having the type of support that you need in a caregiver?
Well, I mean, I want to be clear that I have a lot of virtual support. It's about that local support. If you don't have other family that's near, and though, so I have done things like in the church, to reach out. But what I find a little bit harder is well, now that I'm not in active treatment, because everyone wants to help when they see you going through something, you're both going through something. But now that I'm post-treatment and I look healthy, no one's thinking that I actually do need help. And so that to me is when it gets frustrating, because everyone's like, oh, you're so strong. And I am, but I started saying I'm going to start putting my oxygen mask on first, and then I will help others. And so what I've started doing, this is pretty recent, is, I'll say, you know what, mother, I'm fatigued today. I'm fatigued more than usual today. So how about I come out this weekend, instead of during the week. Small changes have actually been helping. And I had to acknowledge that even if that's a small change, it's still an impactful small change, because it helps me. And being able to, say to someone, hey, I really did want to hang out, and go to dinner, but I'm tired. And that's another way of advocating for myself, is saying I need rest. So I think it's just hard when you don't have that local support, because I have a million cancer besties. Some might be listening right now, and that is so fantastic. So I can talk about everything, but then at the end of the day, when I hit leave the Zoom, then it's just me. And then I travel, because we do not live together, to my mother, and sometimes it does weigh on me. But then other times what I find is lovely. We don't always just talk about cancer. We are still very much the, I'm the zany one. My mother's very, pragmatic, and we still talk and everything. But I think there is a closeness when it's a mother-daughter type of duo of going through the cancer experience and then being caregivers, and then the guilt that she has, that she sees when I'm in pain now, and that she's not able to, physically help me. So it's a strange dynamic. I'm a big believer in therapy. And what Chef Lee said, even finding a nutritionist. I divorced my active treatment oncologist. That's what I like to tell people. And I went and got another one. I auditioned my therapist, who I often call the cutie therapist. That's the nickname for him. And I was like, he won the coveted role of being my therapist. But that's because he's trained in adolescent and young adult, because I was diagnosed under 40, trained in grief, trained in chronic pain. And so it's it can take longer to find those professional resources, because sometimes I really just need someone to talk to objectively, who reminds me of how much I'm already doing, and to extend myself grace.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And I think you just helped just a whole community of folks who fall into a very different category. Audre Lorde says that we heal in community. And so sometimes that's a virtual community, and generations, you know, generations make a difference for those who are millennials and Gen Zers and Alpha. Internet, that's cool. They're good in that space. But those of us who might be Gen Xers or baby boomers, or you know, even before, what would that? Never mind. We're not going to go into that one. But but you know, it's just a different process, and it's a different experience in how we find community and finding support. Just really quickly, Carrie's Touch, we have a model called our Ubuntu circle of support. And Ubuntu is a South African phrase that came from Bishop Desmond Tutu, that says, I am because you are. And so we believe that there's always somebody, and that's, you know, the circle in the center of that circle. It's that that's the inner circle. That's the person that knows all your secrets. They know where all the bones are hidden. And then the next one is a phone call away. It's a person you don't talk to all the time, but if you need them, you can pick up that phone and they are right there. And then the next group is a group of one and dones, right? Somebody on here said, I think it was you, Megzy, that said the folks are right there. They're when you're going through it, and then they're kind of, you know, in the background once you've quote unquote healed, not understanding the healing journey, and it continues well beyond the last day of treatment. And then it's community. It's those folks, those groups, it's those book clubs, it's church, it's work, it's, you know, your jogging group, your yoga friends, who all come together as a community, and they say, hey, let's go clean so-and-so's house today. So in that Ubuntu circle of support, we honestly believe that you can find someone to meet the need that you might be having. And I think, Megzy, you just displayed that beautifully in how you are finding support and navigating space. Now, y'all, I know when we started this conversation almost an hour ago, you probably were a little nervous and had some butterflies and go, I don't know how we're going to get through this whole, you know, hour, how we're going to fill it up. And guess what? We have filled up our time. So I always like to ask and end with asking each of you, if there was something that you felt like you did not say and you wanted to leave the golden nugget with the audience, I'm going to give each of you 90 seconds to tell us what that thing is. What do you want to leave the audience with tonight? Let's start with Monisha.
I don't know. I feel like I said a lot, but I think just the reminder that, you know, there's no trophy for like being the strongest person in the room, for, you know, you don't get a gold sticker for how much you can carry. So if people are willing to help, I think let people help, ask for what you need, that it doesn't make you less strong for accepting help and asking for help, that there is someone who is available and willing to help, and your caregiver may not be your mother, it may be a neighbor or, you know, a church member. So nobody should have to feel like they have to go through this breast cancer journey alone.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Megzy.
I once had a friend say, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And that's always stuck with me. And, you know, so I'm a big believer of saying, you know, you do have to ask for help. People are not going to be able to read your mind or even anticipate, because especially when you're already known as such a strong person, it can be hard on them when they see you become vulnerable. But it's like, hey, I need the help, so get over it. But really and truly, it's about also making sure that you're doing things incrementally, you know, throughout the day to make sure you're eating properly, make sure you're taking care of yourself, taking the supplements, getting the rest, and being really intentional about that. Like how Chef Lee said, eat mindfully. That's something I would recommend. And communicating with, you know, your patient, your your parent, your friend, whoever is the one that you are caregiving for as well, like communicate and express, hey, I'm fatigued today, but I'll come tomorrow, and that's okay.
Beautiful. So that's a perfect volley into Chef Lee.
I would say to the caregivers, be an active listener is truly important, and paying attention. By you paying attention and being an active listener, you'll be able to be the best caregiver you can truly be and understand someone's needs, and where you can help them to adjust, and to also pay attention to the way that you're eating, making sure that you're consistently eating, consistently drinking, consistently being mindful in your movement and your self-care. Because without that, you will not be able to take care of the person that you're looking to be a stronghold for, as well as for yourself. And to those who are out there still thriving and surviving through this, you as well as the rest of these ladies have said, have to open your mouth, tell people what it is that you need, so people can understand how to help you. And as much as you may not want to eat, as much as you may not be in the mood to figure out what is going to work best for you, you have to do the research and you have to want to help yourself so others can help you. There's so many different ways that you can get through this and come out on top, but you have to open your mouth in order to do that.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you. And Miss Sylvia.
I would say to just feel comfortable with saying, I'm not okay. I think as a caregiver, sometimes we feel guilty when we don't feel okay. When we don't step up to the plate, we feel like we're not meeting that expectation. And so we have to learn that an empty container can pour out nothing. If you don't have anything in you, you can't pour into someone else. So we have to understand, we have to sometimes go to that refueling station and fill up so that we can push someone to keep going and not give in. So it's okay to say you're not okay.
Wow, an empty container can pour out nothing. I got to make sure I write that down correctly. Talk about wisdom and nuggets. Just a beautiful conversation. I want to thank each of you for joining us tonight. I wish you well on your journeys of continuing of survivorship and thriving, navigating the space. I wish each of you to have what you need in this space. And I wish that each of you would take your own advice and make sure that you continue to do the things that you are doing to nurture yourself and to care for yourself, putting on your own oxygen mask first. I want to also thank for the rest of us and Count Me In for inviting me back to be your moderator. That is a huge honor to me to be here. Thank you also to CGen for helping to sponsor. And before we go, I want to let those of you who participated in tonight's town hall that your names will be entered into a raffle to win a $50 gift card. So woohoo to you. Until then, make sure that you're eating right or eating the best foods for your gut health, making sure you're getting enough water, making sure you're getting enough rest, and making sure that you are moving your body so that as you care for others, you care for yourself first. Reverend Dr. Tammy Denise, thank you for being with us tonight. Bye.